Hello, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and today is January 14th, 2026. And we're in Great Work Launchpad episode 37, Shadow Work Part 35, Fear or Love Part 20. And we're going to be talking about the Tree of Love. The Tree of Evil. I'm all over the place. Ain't no Tree of Love we're going to be talking about. It's going to be the opposite of that. We got Brandon Spencer about to pop in here. There we go. How's it going?
Howdy.
Yeah, so I'll do my little intro there. The Great Work Launchpad. The goal is to get people launched into doing the great work. Discovering truth, embodying love, talking about the force of fear or love that motivates us. So that's what we've been talking about lately. And to get us to the goal of freedom. And so you need to light a fire under your ass to engage in that work. And that's what the great work is for. And that's what the Launchpad podcast, videocast, whatever, is trying to get people to get into the understanding of. And with that, where's the other one? This one, there's a little plug for how to be the true media, how to become the true media. That's already going, but you can sign up next year if you need help to figure out how to, well, the list is right there, how to figure out how computers work if you're like not very good with computers, and that's one of your limiting fear factors, your excuses holding you back. Well, you can use that as an opportunity to learn, or go learn it on your own. There's no excuse not to learn. Plenty of ways to learn. This is just one of the ways, handcrafted and hand-delivered by Mark Passio himself, or go learn on your own, like I did in my life, and Brandon did in his life, and a bunch of people do. Not everyone needs to take it, but you can. So there's the course. And we got Funnel 5 coming in February, 21, 22 of February. So that's the Ignite Hearts and Minds Funnel 5, freedomundernaturallaw.com. You can go check that out. Yeah. Well, another thing about the Great Work Launchpad, if you feel, you have fears of apprehensions, insecurities about presenting or going online, or you're not comfortable, well, here you can come on and have your try at engaging in a subject matter that hopefully you're familiar with. You probably should become more familiar with it to become a contributor, so that you can add your voice to our choir here, our little symphony that we're doing on this little podcast. And then you need to spend more time to learn and have something to contribute to spin around when you do come on board. Or you could have an idea for something you want to talk about and have a little 5-minute mini presentation. You could do something like that. This is open to help people to learn. If you want some help on how to get started, you can contact me. I'd always recommend doing text, since that's very low pressure and an easy way to get started on trying to output something out there to explain things. All right.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Before we jump into it, because you brought up, the tech class, I really hope that individuals have a powerful desktop or laptop or some form of device, because I think in the next few years, the average technology for the average individual is going to be extremely expensive, that they may not even be able to afford it. And we are just in the beginning stages of it. And I've, watched prices, increase over the past year. So if you do not have that powerful device, you need to hurry up and get one, because prices are tripling. And they already, like all the major manufacturers for any piece of technology that requires, a chip, or RAM, all of the major manufacturers have already said that they are going to increase prices this year. So phones, tablets, desktops, laptops, PlayStation, Xbox, anything that that requires RAM, storage, and a chip, which is pretty much most technology that we use. So I hope people are prepared and at least you know have their tools now, because without those tools, good luck trying to morally educate people.
Yeah, I guess secondhand things will also go up since the overall value of what they contain, which is the RAM in solid state drives or graphics card memory or just computer memory. So you could buy secondhand. You don't have to buy new. You can buy plenty of stuff that's not super powerful
Yeah,
and get the job done.
yeah,
Like I've been doing this since 2014. The computer I have now is a lot better than then, and I could still do it with what I had back then and do the same thing I do now. Maybe I don't know. I guess the CPU usage would be more increased with like OBS or something. But yeah, I could still do it with what I had then. I think it was like a 3 gig video card or something. So it would still work. But yeah,
yeah. You just gotta wait. You gotta be a little bit more patient. But yeah, it still works.
yeah. But yeah, definitely now's the time. Yeah, it'll be a while before the prices come down because everything's into the AI craze. So yeah, what we're talking about is the tree of evil, as Mark Passio has symbolized it as a tree. So we got our tree, and that's the fruit. You got all these. Look at these colorful, tasty fruits. They look so good. Look at that nice candy. Yeah, and that's how evil portrays itself, usually in the veil of good. That's how it goes on. It goes unscathed and unmolested, undeterred, unperturbed. That evil veils itself in the appearance of good, oftentimes, which is what government is, and many of the associated things like police and military. So we got the fruit of evil, and then we're going to get into talking about the leaves of ignorance, because for the fruit to happen, you need leaves. Without leaves, there's no photosynthesis. The fruit won't come about. So the fruit depends on the leaves. Leaves need branches. You don't just have leaves by themselves, so that depends on the branches. And the branches come from a trunk of a tree, so you can't have any of the above without the lower. And you can't have any of that without roots. Without roots, you don't have anything. So that's the fruit of evil. From evil stems from ignorance, from the fear of responsibility, from self-loathing, and from a parental abandonment. So we're going to get into that. Maybe finish it up this week. And I have it on, unfortunately, on paper, on small writing. I'll try to be able to, to read my writing, because I always write small. And yeah, it's not too ideal for a podcast, because normally if I'm like, I got things close to my face if I'm like rereading my notes. But yeah, on a podcast it won't be too great. So as we mentioned before, evil is a word, and it's describing things, and there's synonyms for this word evil, and some of the synonyms are things that are immoral, wrong, immorality, theft, violence, slavery. And slavery is the condition of evil. And there's evil behavior that creates that condition. That's the immoral behavior. So that's what we're talking about at the tip, is the fruits of evil. And as we mentioned before, there's plenty of places you can go online, and people are always talking about the flavor. I call it the flavor of the week, the flavor of the day, the next nonsense, immoral thing that's coming up, and it's always happening. So those fruits, if you're going to just try to chop off the fruit from the tree, well, there's going to be always new fruits coming up. It's always going to happen because the tree's still there. And the same if you go after the leaves. Well, the branches are there to produce more leaves, produce more fruit. And, even if you chop down a tree all the way, if the roots are still there, it's going to make an offshoot, and then there's going to come little branches, and then there's going to come little leaves, so it's going to come back. So you got to go all the way down to the root, which is the point of the symbolism of the tree of evil as Mark Passio created it. Is because if you focus on any of these levels here, you're not actually getting to the root cause of the problem. And that's what the emphasis of, most of the emphasis of Mark Passio's work, and a lot of mine, most of mine, I don't really talk about the symptoms either, is that we're trying to get to the root causal understanding of why the conditions, the symptoms are there. And that's that fruit here. Well, that's at the end. Well, that's at the tip. And there's layers beneath it that make it so that that end can be the outcome that it is. So all these layers can be analyzed to understand how the previous one above came into being. And that's what we're trying to get at, is how evil becomes manifested to perpetuate the condition of our human enslavement. So that's the fruits of evil part. And when we're talking about the leaves of ignorance, well, that's ultimately it's the willful ignorance of objective morality. That's what it comes down to. And the willful ignorance of immorality in the world, first of all. If you're ignorant of the evil, then you're not even going to be able to do anything about it because you don't even know it's there. You can't even identify that it's there. Hence the ignorance of objective morality, because if you have objective morality, then you can identify things for what they are. You can categorize them. You can apply the law of identity to properly be able to analyze and diagnose the problems and see things for what they are. So this is to differentiate right from wrong. And that's what people don't have. They are willfully ignorant and they do not want to know. In many cases, you can talk to people about, do you know the actual objective difference between right and wrong? And they won't. And they're not really going to be interested because most people are not interested in this deeper philosophical understanding, which is at the core of our human condition and why it is this way and how we can change it. And they just don't want to know it. And this will tie into, all the other levels as well as this. Is objective morality. This is all about objective morality. At each of these layers, it's always a failure of objective morality. Well, I guess maybe not self-loathing. But anyways, I'll get into that, explaining it, I guess, a bit more. So as a result of this ignorance of objective morality, well, we have people who are supporting evil, who are supporting the enslavement of others and their own enslavement. They are condoning it. Or they're enacting it themselves because they're ignorant of what even their own actions are doing. And that's how crucial this top level of the leaves of ignorance. If you don't even have that, well, you're not going to be able to get rid of the fruit. So then you can end up seeing the immorality. So, as I mentioned, all the people in the alternative media talking about the symptoms. Well, a lot of people talking about what they see, and other people are learning about, oh yes, this is happening, that's happening, the flavor of the week. So you can see the immorality, but for a lot of people, they don't care to do anything or to get involved to stop it. Not truly. So like the people talking about the symptoms and the effects, they are doing something. They're raising awareness about that there is a problem. Not the solution, but that there is a problem. So that is a necessity. So they are doing something. But the people who are consuming it, they're just staying there on the plane of effects, on the symptoms, the problems, and they don't actually have the knowledge of the solution. They don't have the root causes to be able to effectuate a solution at that root causal level, which is the roots here, to actually move forward into the future and not have the fruits of evil come back. A lot of this is, this willful ignorance is from a denial, a rejection, a refusal of information when it's presented, or even, going into new information to try to, eventually come across Passio's work or other people who are talking about it. And oftentimes there's even cognitive dissonance that when they do consume it, they engage in this refusal and rejection and denial because they can't let go of what they've already learned and believe to be true. And a lot of all this is ego attachment, because they're too attached to it. That relates to the ego, and also this aspect of I can't be wrong about this, or else I look like an idiot. I'm a fool. So there's a lot of psychology in this, and all of this is psychology. And all the shadow work, it's all about the self and this cognitive dissonance and rejection. That's part of this willful ignorance, and it's a core problem to the manifestation of evil here. We see it at the top layer. That's like level 4. Level 5 is, well, the problem itself. It's all the evil, and then, well, how's that happening? Well, it's this ignorance of objective morality. Because if people had objective morality, then they would actually be in a position where they could choose not to engage in the behavior and not support behaviors that were being immoral. And then we might see people who were more willing to unite on the common ground and not support it. And then we might see things actually change because they would not be voting or not sending their money into certain things, or like 401ks or RRSPs in Canada that invest in companies for their retirement that are not doing good things in the world. And they don't care as long as they're comfy and cushy for their retirement, and that's what matters to them. I was going to mention something else, but it slipped my mind. So I'll let you ring on this, Brandon, and what you got?
We need an acronym for that. How would it be, like Flub Tour?
Well, maybe we could ignore the flub tour part and look at the IFSP. I don't know. EIFSP. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be the main part. Yeah.
We've all heard the saying, "By thy fruits you shall know them," and it really has two connotations. Yes, the fruits are our behaviors, that we put back into the world, and those fruits can be, positive or negative. But also, too, those fruits are also seeds. So the seeds that we are planting, the seeds that we are sowing, and that parental hell abandonment, that unseen seed, like most roots, they are unseen. That trauma that resides in our unconscious, we push that on to our next kin, to our own seeds, and it's that cycle that constantly, continues. So the planting of seeds, yes, are our actions, but two, hell, the poisoning of the minds of the youth of our own children, and to continue that cycle. And that's what the individual should be trying to break, trying to break this traumatic cycle so we can break the external slave cycle. And, that's what we are trying to encourage. That's what we are trying to help inspire. So, how when you talk about, how the trunk and, how the roots, and especially the self-loathing part, we've touched upon how all of this already, especially, how the self-loathing part. I think we went in that like maybe 3 to 5 episodes, but we are trying to get to the root, hence the root of the problem, the crux, the heart of the matter. And this is where the emphasis should be, because this is where all of the problems lie, the parental hell abandonment. And yes, hell, like it's been said before, your parents could have been there physically to provide. How they could have gave you all the best gifts and provided, the best health environment from a physical level. But what about the emotional level, the psychological level, the spiritual level, hell, the mental level? A lot of that stuff, gets ignored, and that's usually where we are underdeveloped in. So, trying to break this parental abandonment cycle is what usually leads to our own traumatic experiences and our own, self-loathing and our fear of health responsibility and our own ignorance. And therefore we continue to eat upon that, you know, deadly fruit and pass that deadly fruit on to others. So until we break that cycle, which is going to require care, knowledge, and a responsibility, sacrifice, time and hell, attention, and most importantly, honesty and stop lying to yourself, then you sadly most things aren't going to change. And that's why, a lot of people will tune into that flavor of the week, because that flavor of the week are those fruits of evil that they want you to, stay attuned to, because that's why I don't really keep up with what's going on in, into the world, because I like to be the one who decides what comes into my own kingdom. And we really have to do a better job of letting quality information in, and putting up those barriers so that garbage toxic information stays out. And that's one thing I've been doing for at least a decade now, and that's not easy to do. But I wish more people would incorporate that, because how we talk about the kingdom, well, the inner kingdom is really what needs to be protected, our own consciousness, our own minds, and how we think, because we can easily be influenced. And that's why having knowledge is so hell important, because once you have hell the knowledge, then you are in a position to not only educate, but you can become consciously aware when those influences are trying to use those techniques of mind control upon you. So then therefore you can recognize it and say, hey, I'm not going to be a part of it, or you can pull back how your efforts, just as though with the knowledge of right and wrong. How then you can start to analyze your own behaviors, because at the end of the day, it always comes back to the self and the self analyzation. So, are you really analyzing your own thoughts? Are you really analyzing your own behaviors? And all of that starts. Well, it's supposed to start if we had good moral parenting. Because it would be easier doing it the first time around than trying to clean up all that shit, and doing it the second, third time, because it's much much harder. So if we had you know good solid foundational roots, based in true moral guidance and true moral parenting, then it would be a lot more easier. But sadly, not too many people get brought up in that correct moral environment.
Yeah, we'll get to the parental abandonment. I wanted to go in like phases. So, did you have
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
specifically on ignorance though, before we leave that and go into
Oh
the
shit, I
three?
see it every goddamn day. Um, hell, I'm gonna wait till hell next time. Hell, I'm gonna get some
All right,
thoughts.
it's all good. So yeah, the willful ignorance, can apply to many things. Can be ignorant of the problem, the symptom, and certainly pretty like 99%, 99.99% of even the people who are aware of the symptoms and are into like the alternative media in the truth and freedom movement, whatever, they're just stuck in the symptoms. They have no understanding of the solutions. Anything they think is actually a solution is not a solution, because they're just looking at, oh, well, this fruit is here, and I'm going to take away this fruit, and I'm going to put a good fruit on the tree. And like that's their political reform, their monetary reform, all these like little things that they want to change the way things are done, but just still living, having the same way of life still being present, because they're not addressing the roots, which is this ultimately, as I mentioned before, like this is all about gaining the understanding of objective morality. Because even if you, rearrange the chairs on the sinking Titanic, the Titanic's still going to sink. So even if you have people who are like, yeah, we all know what wrong is wrong, and let's just do homesteading and I don't know, food forests, and let's do a crypto or gift economy or meritocracy or I don't know, all these other things. And it's like, do you actually have the objective knowledge of what the difference between right and wrong? If you don't, then how the hell are you going to explain to someone? How is anyone going to come to a clear, logical diagnosis when something does go wrong, when people do falter and fail, to be able to like explain, well, why is it wrong? Oh, well, no, it's just because we feel it. We all know it internally. We just, you just know. Well, okay, you just X happened. X is wrong. Why is it wrong? I don't know. I don't have that knowledge of why it's wrong. Well, that's what we're talking about here. Is this objective morality is the why, is how you are able to determine and characterize and categorize and diagnose whether something is right or wrong. Is it in the category of objective right or objective wrong? And if you don't have that knowledge, then you can have all these other alternatives of like slightly better ways of living or and all this stuff. But when conflicts happen and someone is in the wrong, all you're going to have to rely on is everyone agreeing that it's wrong, but not based on being able to objectively get them to understand why it's wrong, or combat a bunch of people who agree that something's wrong when it's actually right, or think something's right when it's actually wrong. If you can't actually objectively define it and explain it, the truth about it, then you're going to be screwed anyways, because everyone's going to be like, oh, well, I feel this is right, or I feel this is wrong, and then you're not going to really go anywhere. You're just going to be screwed in the falsity and the unreality of a false perception of what is right and wrong. So this ignorance, people are in this ignorance, and for whatever reason, that is the condition. And there's a why. So why is there evil? What's this ignorance of objective morality? Why is there this ignorance of objective morality? And that's where we get to these branches of fear of responsibility. And you could mention other fears as well, but we're relating this to this whole theme of going down to the parental abandonment. So why fear of responsibility? What responsibility? What responsibility do people have? What's the fear of owning personal responsibility to do right, to do what is moral? They can say, well, I'm not responsible for doing that. So maybe they didn't do it. So we're talking about two different levels of responsibility. One is the responsibility of things that they do themselves, like their own actions and their willful ignorance of objective morality or denial, rejection of it. And then there's also the responsibility of having that knowledge of objective morality, and then what are you going to do with it? Because having the knowledge itself is only a potential power. The true power comes in acting on it. If you actualize the knowledge within yourself and it becomes part of your behavior, then you're acting it out in the real world, or you're outputting your, as I mentioned, I think last week, regurgitating it. You're taking it in and then you're spewing it back out. That's that output of the rhetoric of the trivium, where you take in the knowledge and then you put it back out for others to take it in so that they can gain that knowledge of objective morality. Well, people don't want that responsibility. And that's what this fear of owning that personal responsibility is that, okay, well, now you have objective morality. Well, what are you doing with it? Okay, you could say, all right, you modified your own behavior and you stopped. You retracted yourself. You abdicated, or engaged in apophysis to deny that behavior within yourself, so you're not going to create it outwards. But there's still a bunch of people who are still doing it. So what are you going to do about them? Now that you know what objective morality is, well, they're against objective morality. So the only way to get them to stop is, well, there's two ways. One is the more, less bloody way, which is moral education. And the bloody way is enough people have the moral education and they make them stop. And the people who don't want to stop put up a fight, and then people get hurt, people die. So the easier way is this moral education, which is the great work, ultimately. And that's what people don't want, is the fear of owning this responsibility, because it's a lot easier to be ignorant of objective morality, because when you have the objective morality, well, it's not power in itself unless you do something with it. And that's the being a teacher of objective morality. That's where the real power comes in to effectuate the change, to really get at this tree. And that's where it comes into what parental abandonment is. You're going to be acting as a parent towards others to educate them, to raise them. But if you have your own children, and then they have children, and they have children, well, that's the real solution, is moral education at the parental level, so that people aren't raised or aren't unraised in this false raisedness as becoming adults and going out into society, and they're on the checkerboard floor walking, and they don't know if they're actually, their behavior they engage in is actually in the category of the light square or the dark square. So we need to know how to choose rightful over wrongful action and not abdicate it, not give it away to someone else, to really own our own behaviors and the responsibility for what we do. And people don't want that. That's that first level of like, oh, well, I don't want to know what's objectively right or wrong, because then I might be doing something that's objectively immoral. And that would mean I'd have to stop doing that. And I don't want to, maybe they don't want to stop doing it. And, that's one level that people need to do it. But we're talking about, I keep coming back to teaching objective morality. People don't want it because they don't want to do something with it even beyond their own behavior. They don't want to try to engage in the work of ending evil. It's not just you stopping to do it yourself, which is going to change it, because there's still everyone else still doing it. So with that knowledge comes responsibility. And that's the responsibility people don't want. And a lot of people just want to let others decide what is right for wrong for how they behave. So that comes back to the first category of, well, I don't want to know because I don't want to change my behavior, and I just want to let other people decide what's right for wrong. That can be the government and people telling me what's right and what's wrong. And then you have order followers who just follow the orders, or people telling them, do this and this is what's right, and don't do this, don't let people do that because that's what's wrong. And they do what they're told. So there's the refusing the ownership over your actions in doing evil. And then the second type is refusing the responsibility to do something with what you know, which is the great work. So we mentioned those two so far. And then there's also the refusal to learn because you would have the responsibility to do something with what you know, which ties in, I guess that's the same as the second one. Doing something with what you know, beyond your own behavior, and changing your own behavior to stop doing that thing. And, this comes down to people not wanting to be true adults. They want to stay as a grown child. And that's because they're running away. And that's this fear part. This fear comes down to running away from that personal responsibility to gain the knowledge and then do something with that knowledge that they gain. So they're not mentally grown up, they're not emotionally grown up, and they're not psychologically grown up. And that is most of the people we have in the world today. They do not want to enter what Passio termed cosmic adulthood. So they are unraised. So you can see how this is, we're leading towards that aspect of parental abandonment, because if you're not raised, well, you're a child. And children don't want responsibility for what they do in large part. When did you do this? No, I didn't do that. It wasn't me. Well, that's how children often behave. They don't want to take responsibility for their actions. So people don't want not only to not take responsibility for their actions, but even those that do, they do not want to take it to another level of taking responsibility for bringing this knowledge, amplifying this knowledge, I'll say it, to amplify this knowledge into the collective brain space. I don't know, like the internet. I'm trying to find another term for it, but they don't want to bring it to the potential of awareness, which is where people are going to become aware of things, is through the internet. This spreading of digital information in various forms, whether it's text or memes or video or audio. This is where the information needs to be brought to for people to potentially get access to it. Because if it's not there, then what you have left is physical books, and well, word of mouth ain't gonna cut it. That's just shit. It's been totally inadequate for all of human history. Word of mouth is just, you ain't going nowhere with that. That's very slow, very ineffective, and writing is like a rocket ship beyond word of mouth. And then we got the internet, which is like warp drive into other galaxies or something. I don't know. It's the internet is an amazing tool, and it's so being underutilized. You think of in the past, there was no internet, and at one point there were no books, and how hard it was to convey information, to get people to understand any aspect of these philosophies. You'd have to talk with someone physically in your presence and try to educate them about this. This is like hundreds of hours of understandings. How often are you going to be able to do that with one person? Like, that's so slow to progress the evolution of consciousness on an aggregate, collective, global scale. It's just like ant crawl. It's a turtle the size of an ant. That's how slow it would be. Or a snail the size of an ant. Just super, super slow. So yeah, this is the fear of responsibility. Is this responsibility to do something with the thing that you're not going to be ignorant of. So if you've gotten over this willful ignorance of objective morality, and now you have it in your hands, you're like, all right, I have objective morality. But I don't want to do anything with. No, I don't want to take on that responsibility. That's not for me. That's for you. You guys do good. You guys do great. Keep doing it. Yay, you're doing a good job. All right. Me, no, it's not for me. I don't want to have it. No, I'm too busy. I got shit going on in my life. I don't want to do it. I know it's not for me. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I'm too dumb. I don't know how to do anything. We've gone over this. This is what the whole 2 months ago, these whole excuses that we went into. That's the whole point of this. This is why the fears are all the excuses were fear based, and hence the whole episode 20 now, or whatever it is, on the fear or love as what motivates you. And that's what we're talking about here. This whole tree is a tree in that polarity of fear, that syntropic, devolutionary or stagnation, chaotic aspect, where that's what's motivating you, is this propensity and this tendency based in fear. And so even the people who do know objective morality, they can still be stuck in this fear of owning that personal. They don't want that responsibility. It was last week or the week before with Atlas on the shoulders, and they don't want to bear that weight. They just don't want it. And so they don't take it upon themselves. They don't bear the cross. Pass it to you, Brandon.
Yeah, because we sure are trying to do this the easy way. Because, man, people seem to want to do it the hard way, and that's not the path that I personally want to go. But if it goes that route, it goes that route. Fuck it. It's like how Malcolm X, he once said, he doesn't care how the black community, have reached its freedom. Either, it can be, with government, which that course, wasn't a option, or he can say, hell, it can go, like the kind of hardcore, path. And, hell, we shouldn't take the hardcore path, hell, option two here off the table. Because it is what it is. But to get back on the ignorance part, something that came to mind is ignoring what's possible. You know, the depth of the imagination, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with. Because they can get all of the knowledge part, but if you can't imagine stuff, envision it in your mind, then it's going to be hard to kind of articulate these things and put it back out, in the form of more education. So these things that we talk about, I envision this stuff in my big ass head all the time. Like it's running through my mind constantly, probably about 95% of the time. Like I'm always, having conversations in my mind, trying to, you know, help envision this stuff. And that's more helpful for me because it does help my creativity. But being able to envision this, other stuff and stop ignoring, how what is possible because there is no limit on consciousness and being ignorant. It's hard to create. It's hard to construct things if you don't think it's possible because you can't envision it in how the mind. Then how can you create it into her reality? So um what was the second part? Oh yeah, the the fear of personal her responsibility and those branches. Um, hell, if I recall a time when man, my mom she was like, Brandon, go out there and grab a switch. Cause she was about to light my ass up. She tore my ass up. And this was when I was young. But how that hell just have reminded me, the fear of her responsibility and the trauma, that came along with that. And that's sadly where a lot of people are still at is, they don't want to take that next step into being, that teacher. Hell, they don't want to take that next step, which is a big giant leap into showing that true love and that true care. And hell, like I've always said, if you truly love something, if you truly care for something, then you'll get over whatever bullshit fears hell you'll have because you understand the depth that comes along with that care. Just like the child who gets his first toy, he wants to show it off to everybody he sees. He wants to show it off to the world. We should have that same level of energy and hell emotions when it comes to morally educating. We should want to dive in and be eager to, you know, to spread this knowledge because it's so powerful. It's life changing. What is more powerful than knowing the difference between right and wrong? You know, and to get into more of the ignorance part, because I said I kind of think about it. How one of the health solutions you hear people talking about is building a community. That's all good, but there is no community if there's no basis, there's no foundation in objective morality. So you have to, again, like we say, morality is the pinnacle of all human interactions, of all human relationships. So without that knowledge, it doesn't matter what you try to build. It doesn't matter what you try to construct. If you have not raised in consciousness and understand that level of morality, then sadly, given enough time, whatever you try to build, it will crumble. So what does it mean to raise something? It means to uplift. It means to bring about. It means to make it upright. And that's what you need is to raise your consciousness by way of knowledge so we can raise others, by taking that level of her personal her responsibility. And again, I understand, some of this stuff is not easy to do. But again, it takes time, it takes a lot of willpower and it takes a lot of care, it takes a lot of her dedication. Because again, you really have to want to get better. You really have to want to better your existence and not just your existence, but existence for others, and then you'll dive in and then you'll want to take that personal, responsibility. I never thought that hell watching that Spider-Man movie in the early 2000s with the
Toby
hell not
Maguire.
yeah, Toby Maguire. And when his dad said, hell, with great power comes great responsibility.
Uncle
How I
Ben.
was, yeah, hell, I was a teenager then, and I didn't really quite grasp, that quote. But that's one of the, one of the greatest quotes. Because you see that, it's like you see that quote all the time. And yeah, hell, that's really why a lot of people prefer to stay ignorant because they understand at a subconscious level that they would have to be responsible for that knowledge. And I've actually I've had someone tell me that. They were like, I don't want to know because then that means I would have to be responsible. And it's like, what more of a lower place could you be in to
Child,
actually
man.
say
Yeah.
that? Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's the thing is we're dealing with, health psychological children, hell, which I know, hell, we're going to get into in the next few episodes. But yeah, that's exactly what we're dealing with. And it's extremely sad.
Yeah. That, it's like stunted development. When you think of all of humanity, and especially people who, well, at least they were able to admit it, like they don't want to know because then they'd have to be more responsible. But that's what, children, you think of children, do you think of responsibility? No, they're just like carefree, and they're like, they do what they want to do, and then they screw up and they do bad things, and they like hitting their siblings. I got
Yeah.
issues with that, and like biting and things like they don't understand, and they just want to do whatever they feel like doing. And like, as much as morality, like in my earlier work I had miscategorized, I'd say it comes from within. But like, morality is objective, it's from without. But the whole concept that it's written on your heart, a heart of man. But not really, it's not like this automatic thing. It's like, because if you raise children, you'll see that morality isn't something they get right from the get-go. They start off cute and innocent, and then their ego starts to develop, and then it becomes about I and what I
Yeah.
want, and then it's a no. And then when something happens that they don't like, well, then the ego gets in, the I-ness is like, well, I wanted this and I don't get it, so now I'm not happy. And then their emotional aspect comes out, or playing with others, and then they get into fights. And it's like, morality ain't something that's just innate and automatic when you're a child. It's something you have to develop an understanding
Right.
of, and that's through that next phase when you engage in, it's the development of the ego from when they're innocent and like all little children and they're not doing much. You got that ego and the I, and then there's the interaction with other I's. So there's that socio, the I plus others, the me and others interaction, rather than just all about me. I have to learn to coexist with others, and that's where morality is learned. And you can learn that through, the golden rule. And still, that's not objective morality, as I mentioned in my morality presentation. That's like half-assed understanding, because you're just like, well, I don't want it done to me, so like I'm not going to do it to someone else. But you still don't know what objective morality is. It's just a basic blueprint to get you like more or less on the right path of like
Yeah.
not fucking with other people, because you don't want to be fucked with. And it's like a reciprocity. So it can help you coexist better. It can help us all coexist better. This understanding, this automatic understanding. Well, if I don't want it done to me, I'm not going to do it to someone else. And if we all live like that, then things go pretty good. But you still don't have that objective morality. So what I'm getting at is children need to learn this. And yes, it's part of like an automatic aspect of this I plus others, me and others, learning to coexist. You learn this, or you should learn it. It becomes like pretty obvious that like, if you have someone and you do something wrong to them and they just do it back to you, and you just keep engaging in that, then eventually you're going to learn, well, yeah, if I don't do this, then they're not going to do it to me. And hopefully that clicks. And I think every human has that capacity to understand this reciprocal means. And that's what we need is this reciprocity, and that's what we don't have in the world, is this reciprocity as in this adult world that we have, where there's immorality being done, and then there's no reciprocity to bring it back to teach the lesson of, no, you can't fucking do that, because I'm going to show you what it's like. We don't have that in our world. We just have the condoning, the acceptance, the toleration and support of the theft, the various forms of theft, especially through government authority, is the main one. And because that's accepted, well, it just keeps going on, and that's our continual condition of duress and enslavement. But the children, right, what I started with was that our potential, and we've talked about this a few times, if you think about how we are stunted in our development as a human species because of this childlike mindset of refusing to own the responsibility to not only be moral at that first level, but then to do something with that moral knowledge beyond ourselves and to put it out there so that more people can understand what objective morality is. And it's, as I'm saying, it's not just getting people to understand the golden rule, because that only goes so far. You're not going to be able to explain why something is right or wrong. You're just going to be like, well, I don't like that done to me, so then people shouldn't do it to me, and I won't do it to them. That's not objective morality. That's not the understanding of why a particular behavior is wrong. That's this automatic, written on our hearts, written on our consciousness, this automatic aspect that we come to understand through reciprocity. Yep. Of why not to do bad things, wrong things to other people, because then, well, how would you like it being done to you? So if you think it's okay to do it to others, then they can do it to you because you think it's okay to do. So no, you don't want it done to you, so then it's not okay for them. And, that can, as I mentioned in my presentation, people can be like, it can get perverted. I think the example I used was being told something you don't like. So a truth, someone tells you a truth. Well, I don't like being told truths that are harsh truths or that hurt me, hurt my delicate sensibilities, hurt my ego, my attachments to other things that I don't want to let go of. So I don't want that done to me. So then, well, I won't do that to other people. I won't put the truth out there that could be abrasive or be harsh or rock the boat for people who could come across it. So I'm not going to do that because, I don't want to be disturbed that way. So I'm not going to disturb others, or, thinking that because you don't want to be disturbed that way, and that's something that you don't like, that you don't want done to you, then no one has a right to do that. No one has a right to speak. No one has a right to put that information out, because then it'll take you away from that feel-good comfort about how you feel about yourself, how you think about yourself, your self-view and your worldview. And that hurts. The ego gets all bruised and offended when your behavior becomes into question, and a mirror gets put up to show you how you're behaving or how you're failing in some way. And people don't want to hear that. So this golden rule it's useful and it gets you to a certain point, but it's not good enough. And already if we were there, we would still be a lot further than where we are, I think, because it's not totally being applied. But this aspect of our potential and how we're all just stunted children who do not want to take on responsibility for things in the world. The things in the world, well, I didn't create it. I didn't make that situation happen. And so they're like, well, it's not up to me to do anything about it. People don't want to take on that responsibility to end the evil. That's what this is all about. This great work is ending enslavement, ending immorality, ending evil. And they do not want that responsibility on them. They didn't make it happen, so they're like, well, it's not my behavior, and it's not for me to deal with. And so there you go. If everyone thinks like that, then you just have the people who have immorality done the people who are doing immorality. And since everyone else isn't doing that immorality, well, let's just let the people who are being immoral continue to be immoral because, well, it's not me, so I'm not going to do anything about it. Or if it's not affecting me, then it's up to the person who's being affected to be the one who has to deal with it, and then no one else has to do anything with it. And hence, which is why people want government, because the government is there. Government is only there as a result of the degraded, infantile, stunted state of overall human consciousness. It could be gone, and government's not going anywhere until humanity evolves in consciousness, because people want that parental authority to step in and take care of things for them, because they're all alone, and if there's people being bad, well, they don't have the support because people aren't at that level of moral unison, of being at that connection to truth together, connection to morality, to stand together united against injustices. So when an injustice happens, they look to a centralized authority to deal with the injustice. And it does do that in some degree, but it also perverts it in other aspects. So that's why it's not a overall good system. And the only reason it's there is because people do not want this responsibility. They don't want to take on the responsibility of having to deal with things in life themselves. They want someone else, no, you take care of this. I'm going to do my thing here, and I don't want to deal with that. So here, you have the power, and there you go. Good system. You have the power, and now you can abuse it. And you're abusing it. Oh, who saw that coming? Not me. No, we couldn't see that coming. Just giving them this power, and they fuck us over with it. But no, that's not what was going to happen, because those special people were angels, while the rest of us are the shit, and we can't manage our own lives and learn to live together and deal with things in a moral basis, because we don't have this knowledge of objective morality to fucking begin with, hence this ignorance. So let's just be in fear of the responsibility of owning it and just pass it off to another group who can just pervert it, twist it, and then abuse us, continue to abuse us as an abusive parent that we look to solve our problems for us, and they keep abusing us. It's so demented and twisted. I'll pass it back to you to wrap up. You got anything to say?
I mean, who needs to take personal responsibility when you have Jesus Christ? He'll come in here tomorrow.
Certainly. That's the ultimate savior there.
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, that's the ultimate,
ultimate authority. He's going to decide. He's going to set things right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So why do I need to get involved? Hell, my boy, JC, he's going to be here. If not tomorrow, then maybe he'll the next day. If not the next day, then the next week. But hell, again, we're still talking about a childlike mindset. And if you want to do a social experiment, whenever you're in a group of people, family members, friends, hell, whatever, forget the bar would be even more freaking entertaining. And whenever there's conversation, just bring up people taking personal responsibility, and just see how the vibe will change, how how these people with childlike mindsets will turn on you. And I've done this so many times, and it's the same thing over and over. You turn into the bad guy. Like, it's oh man, it's crazy. People look at personal responsibility as though, you said you're going to murder and eat their kids, and they just fucking flip on you, dude. I mean, because heaven forbid they have to get up off their lazy fucking asses and actually get involved and actually do something. And that's why nothing ever changes. And I'm glad you brought up that point about how the golden rule. Yes, like, it's a good, basis to get, some understanding, but you can always go further. And until you really understand the why, then you're never really going to understand the how and the reasons and the meaning held behind, that why. So yes, how we can use like the golden rule as like a basic, but then we should always go in further into more clarity on, why you should not engage in these immoral behaviors. Because like like Chris said, there are some people out there who have some fucked up minds, so they may want certain things, done to them that, most people wouldn't want. But, hell, again, you're not really getting into the why certain behaviors should not be done, because not only are they morally wrong, but they are going to bring about negative consequences also for those who are involved. And if enough of us continue to do those hell immoral behaviors, then all of us are going to reap those negative consequences. And hell, again, getting to the why, the root of the matter is the importance. And then two, we don't want to fall into that whole monkeys effect. How what we just do things because it's kind of been conditioned. So same thing here with the golden rule. Um, without that knowledge of why, then you're just kind of repeating a pattern and just saying it because you heard it and you don't really quite fully grasp it and understand it to its deepness. And how when we're dealing here with morality, I think you can always go further and further and learn more and learn more, and that's what raising consciousness is supposed to do. And as we raise consciousness, then we will start to become more and more human beings and understand it and learn more and more hell about morality. But yeah, hell, I got to wrap this up because I got to get up in 6 hours because I'm heading to Las Vegas. I'm heading to the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's gonna be fun.
You got a ball gig there?
Yeah, yeah. There's a tournament, a weekend tournament. So I'm gonna
Well, that's
go
early.
there and
That's 4 a.m.
uh,
You're getting up at?
yeah, yeah.
All right,
Well,
cool.
because hell, Atlanta has the world's biggest airport, so you got to get there like 2, 3 hours in advance. And plus, two, like I don't go through the stupid TSA screening, so I have to go through all that bullshit. And yeah, and then there's a time change, so I'm going to get to Vegas at like 10 in the morning, and I can't check in the 4, so it's gonna be a lot of wasted fucking time. But hell, I'd rather get there early than get there late. So
Cool. We'll have a good time in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. And thanks for coming by again. And hopefully see you around next week. We'll continue the breakdown of the Tree of Evil. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And before we leave, I will leave us with the immortal words of the Mark Passio.
Actual great works of this world isn't.
Screws up everything.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great works of this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
Huh? Huh? How about it? Sounds good, right? All right, let's get to it. Burn rubber. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Take care.